Hi, welcome back. In this next video, we're going to take a look at the advanced company setup. This setup takes just a little bit longer because you'll enter more details about your company, but your file will be more customized to the way you work, and you'll have less changes after the setup is complete. So we're back at the No Company Open window. If you've practiced setting up a company file already, you'll see this window when you open your QuickBooks program. If this is the first file you've ever set up, your screen will look more like the Let's Get Your Business Set Up Quickly window. In the previous video, we took a look at the Express Start, and this time we're going to come down to the Detailed Start. And again, we'll just have to enter our company information. This time QuickBooks is asking for our legal name. The legal name could be the same as your company name, or you may have a fictitious company name and your legal name might be a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you get the correct information in there. And I'm going to enter a tax identification number. I'm also going to put in my city, state, and zip code, just like before. And this time we'll be able to add a fax number, an email address, and a website. And then after our company information is complete, I'll click on Next. Okay, just like in the basic interview, we'll have to select an industry. This is the same list that we saw in the basic interview. What we're not seeing this time, though, is that list of accounts that's associated with each of these industries. A little bit later on, we'll see that account list again, and we'll be able to edit it to match our business more closely. So I'm going to go ahead and select on the general product-based business again. Click Next. And then the how is your company organized, just like before, you have all of the standard options, the sole proprietor, partnerships, corporations, and nonprofits. You'll select the one that best matches your company. Click on Next. Now we need to tell QuickBooks when our fiscal year starts. Generally, your fiscal year will start in January. Sometimes businesses will have a fiscal year or a tax year that starts in a different month than January. Like nonprofits have been known to have their fiscal year start in July, or retailers sometimes have their fiscal year start in February. This way they can more closely match their business cycle to their tax year or fiscal year. I'm going to go ahead and say that our fiscal year starts in January and click Next. And at this point, we'll have to put in a password. We didn't need a password in the basic setup, but we do need one. Well, you don't need one. It's actually optional, but you have the option to enter it as you're setting up your company file. So I'll put my password in and click Next. And then QuickBooks is going to go ahead and create our company. Before it'll create the company, it wants to know where we want to save it. In the basic setup, QuickBooks just assumed that you would put it in the normal path on your computer. In the advanced setup or the detailed setup, we can specify a specific place. But generally speaking, I like to use the same directory that QuickBooks would use, which is C, Users, Public, Public Documents, Intuit, QuickBooks, and Company Files. If you put all of your company files in that same place, you'll never have a problem finding them. And whenever it comes time for upgrades, you'll be able to navigate to that file easily. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save. And QuickBooks will take just a minute to set up my company file. Okay, now our file's set up and we're going to start to customize QuickBooks so that it'll be ready for us to use when our interview is complete. Okay, so this next series of questions, QuickBooks is asking you these questions to determine whether or not you want to turn features on or off in QuickBooks. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them because there's an individual lesson for each and every one of those features. But I just want you to be able to see the various questions that they'll ask. The first one is, do you sell services, products, or both? I'm just going to say both. And generally speaking, I'm just going to turn on every one of these preferences. Do you charge sales tax? Yes. Create estimates. Track customer orders. Use statements. Progress invoicing. Manage bills you owe, which is also known as accounts payable. I'll say yes to that. Tracking inventory. Tracking time. And do you have employees? Yes. And then QuickBooks also wants to know if they're W-2 employees or 1099 contractors. I'll say we have both. Okay, so the next section is going to be about when do you want to start using QuickBooks and setting up the accounts. So the start date in QuickBooks, generally speaking, if you can start tracking your data at the beginning of a fiscal year, that's the ideal scenario, because then you'll have an entire year's worth of data to give to your accountant to be able to do your taxes. If that's not practical, sometimes it isn't. If it's late in the year or if you have a large volume of transactions, you may not be able to practically go back and recreate all of that information in your QuickBooks file within a reasonable period of time. So if that's the case, then you would want to select today's date, or you could select the date at the beginning of a quarter or at the beginning of a month. So if you wanted to change the date to May 1st, for example, you could just select that date there. I'm going to go ahead and select that we want to start tracking at the beginning of the year, and then I'll click Next. Now here is our expense accounts. The ones over at the left with the check marks are the ones that QuickBooks has decided that we would probably need based on all of the questions that we've answered so far. However, if there are accounts that you see in this list that you know you would like to have in your chart of accounts, you can add them by putting a check mark here. And if there's some that you see that you don't want, you can remove those check marks. So you can customize your list, your chart of accounts list, pretty well before you even start working in QuickBooks. And this is actually quite a bit of a time saver. It's easier to put a check mark here and add that account than it is to create that account later on manually. So I'm just going to add a few, take a few away, and we're going to learn how to customize that account list soon. So I'm going to go ahead and say Next here, and now our file is set up. The Go to Setup button down here at the bottom is actually going to take you into QuickBooks. We're going to get a pop-up screen that allows us to add the people or businesses that we work with. We can also add our products or services, and we can add bank accounts. I'm going to go ahead and click on Start Working because we're going to cover each one of those topics separately. And we're also going to get a pop-up that gives us the new feature tour, and I'm going to go ahead and close that as well. Okay, so now our QuickBooks file is set up. We have quite a few features turned on. Now each one of those questions that I answered in that interview has placed an icon here if I replied yes that we do that. So if we wanted to turn these off, I'm going to show you how to do that in our preferences later, but you could customize these after your setup is complete to add or remove these icons as you see fit.